Hello students, so we are starting with the third chapter today, that is in the earliest cities. So in the beginning of the chapter, you will see a paragraph named as saving an old building. So Jaspal and Harpreet were playing cricket in the lane outside their home when they noticed some old people were admiring the dilapidated old building. So they were like they were noticing the building and they were like they were saying like how beautiful the building is. They were admiring the fine wood carving and they were planning to write to the minister to preserve these buildings. So just Jaspal and Harpreet wondered why would anybody be interested in the old rundown houses. So they were wondering कि people को क्या interest है जो buildings इतनी पुरानी हो चुकी है टूटने लग गई है उनको बचाने में लोगों को क्यों interest है इतना. So they were thinking about that. Next, we have the story of Harappa. So, nearly 150 years ago, when the railway lines were first laid down in Punjab, engineers from which were working in the railway lines, they found the Harappa site, and Harappa is in Pakistan in present day, like it's in Pakistan. So to them, it seemed like a rich source of ready-made high-quality bricks. In Harappa site, they found very high-quality bricks and they carried thousands of bricks to build the railway lines. And in this process, many old buildings were destroyed. So around 80 years ago, archaeologists found this site and they realized that this was the earliest cities in the subcontinent, and this was the and these cities were developed around 4700 years ago. So Harappa was the earliest cities and archaeologists have found this 80 years ago, and these cities were developed around 4700 years ago. So next is what was special about these cities. So these cities were divided into, so first of all, let's look upon the map. These are the cities, like you can see. In present day, it's in Pakistan, Harappa. If you can see in the map, Harappa, there is Mohenjo-daro, there is Kanveri, Kalibangan, and there are lots of cities which were found, Lothal. So these cities were divided into two or more parts, like two or three parts of these cities were there, and the part to the west was smaller but higher. So the cities west part, like the west part of the city was smaller but it was higher. So these parts are called citadel. And next is, and the part to the east was larger. Part to the east was larger but lower, and these cities are called lower town. Like the east part were larger but it was lower, so these are called lower town. And very often walls of baked brick were built around each part, like it's, cities, the construction which were used there, these bricks were well baked, and the bricks which were well baked, they lasted for a long time and they couldn't get destroyed soon. So the bricks were laid, so the people who constructed their houses or constructed the old buildings here, these buildings were the bricks which were used in that those buildings were laid in an interlocking pattern that made the walls strong. Like the bricks which they used, they were used in an interlocking pattern so that the walls remained strong. And special buildings were constructed on the citadel, like the special buildings which was there in the cities were constructed on the citadel, where the west was smaller but higher. So like in Mohenjo-daro, a very special tank were constructed and archaeologists have named it as Great Bath. So in Mohenjo-daro city, a special tank is constructed, and this was lined with bricks coated with plaster and made watertight with a layer of natural tar. And there were steps leading down to it from sides, while there were rooms on all sides. So in the great bath, it is well constructed with the plasters, with fine made bricks and watertight layers, so that it could last for very long, and there were steps leading down from the both side, and there were rooms in all sides of the great bath. So the water was probably uh, taken from the well, and the important people, like some important people took dip, like they bathed or they took a dip in the great bath in the special on the special occasions. And other cities such as Kalibangan and Lothal had fire altars. फायर अल्टार्स मीन्स लाइक जिसमें यज्ञ करते हैं ना लोग, यज्ञ का बहुत बड़ा वो होता है, यज्ञ करने के लिए एक स्पेस होता है। सो जो कालीबंगन एंड लोथल में था, वहां पे पूरा यज्ञ का एक पूरा सेटअप था, जहाँ पे लोग यज्ञ परफॉर्म करते थे, सैक्रिफाइसेस परफॉर्म करते थे, लाइक जो भी कोई पूजा होती थी या किसी को कोई बलि देनी होती थी, तो वो लोग कालीबंगन और लोथल में बहुत सारे फायर अल्टार्स के वो भी मिले हैं, लाइक हमें उनके एविडेंसेस मिले हैं बहुत सारे आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट को। सो दैट्स ऑल फॉर द स्पेशलिटी ऑफ these cities. So this is a picture of the Great Bath, which I have told you earlier. So you can look at the construction. So there are steps leading down to and there are various rooms built inside the Great Bath. So you can look upon the structure. It's very well constructed in that old time. So next, we have houses, drains, and streets. So we'll talk about how were the houses, how were the drains, and how were the streets built in the past time. So generally, the houses were 1 or 2 stories, like 1 or 2 stories high. मतलब अभी जैसे प्रेजेंट टाइम में बहुत बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंग्स भी होती है ना, अभी लोगों ने कितनी बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंग्स बना ली है, तो उस टाइम पे सिर्फ 1 और 2 स्टोरीज की बिल्डिंग्स होती थी। एंड जो रूम्स होते थे वो बिल्डिंग्स के कोर्टयार्ड के अराउंड बिल्ड किए जाते थे, लाइक ऐसे स्क्वायर शेप में। एंड मोस्ट हाउसेस हैड अ सेपरेट बाथिंग एरिया, and like they have separate bathing areas, they have wells in their houses for the water purpose. And many of these cities had covered drains, like the cities like Harappa cities or Mohenjo-daro cities, these have covered drains. And those drains were carefully laid down in the straight lines, although you cannot see it, like we cannot see those drains, but these drains were very gently, or you say carefully laid down in a straight line, so the water can flow easily from those drains and it do not get stuck in a place. And each drain had a gentle slope so that water could flow through it. And very often drains in houses were connected to those on the streets, and so drains in the houses were connected to a big drain in the streets, and the smaller drains were let down in a bigger drains. So like in the intervals of the drains, some inspection holes were there for the cleaning purpose of the drains, like for in a particular interval there were a hole to clean the drain. So like हम लोग इन सब चीजों से नोटिस कर सकते हैं, लाइक हाउसेस से, ड्रेन से, कि जो लोग थे हरप्पा मोहनजोदाड़ो जिन्होंने ये कंस्ट्रक्शन किया था, जिन्होंने अपने हाउसेस ड्रेन्स इतने अच्छे से बनाए थे, तो दे वर लाइक वेरी डेवलप्ड, मतलब वो उस टाइम तक बहुत डेवलप्ड हो चुके थे कि उनको ड्रेन्स कैसे बनानी है, उनको कवर करके रखना है, उनको स्ट्रेट बनाना है एकदम, और बीच बीच में उनको होल भी बनाना है ताकि उसको साफ कर सके। So the construction used here was very well planned, and the people were very developed and very knowledgeable to build a very well defined construction. So all these three drains, houses and streets, they were made at the same time. Like houses, drains and streets, they were built at the same time. And they were probably, or you can say, I say definitely, they were planned by some very talented peoples. So they made these cities very smartly. Next is, you can see the picture how the bricks were arranged in the Harappan cities. Like they are arranged in an interlocking pattern. You can see a person who is arranging these bricks for making the wall very strong. So these were the types of construction which were used in the past, and it is very finely designed or finely arranged. So next we have life in the city. So in this paragraph, we'll study how was the life in the city, what was their lifestyle or how people used to live. So Harappan city was a very busy place, like in present day Mumbai or you say Calcutta, Delhi. It's these metropolitan cities are very busy places. Like people always moving from here and there, and lots of traveling, lots of vehicles are moving from here and there. So Harappan city in the past was a very busy city, and there were people who planned the construction of special buildings, like people, or you can say sometime maybe there was some ruler who planned those constructions of the city and who planned how the buildings were to be made. So the ruler, like, it is not confirmed, but from the evidences we can conclude that the ruler which were there in the Harappa, he used to send people to distant lands to get metals or precious stones or other things whichever they wanted. So the people who used to live in the city, they got these things for the rulers, and they may have kept the most valuable objects, like who were the ruler who have whosoever were the rulers, they have kept the most precious objects to them, like golds of silver and like ornaments of gold and silver or beautiful beads or any special or say precious metals they have kept themselves. And there were scribes, people who knew how to write, like there were also scribes, the people who knew how to write. They have made they have prepared the seals, and I'll show you what is seal in the next slide. So and perhaps wrote on other materials that haven't survived, like people जिनको मतलब जो पुराने लोग थे जिनको लिखना आता था, who know how to write, तो उन्होंने काफी सील्स पे भी डिजाइन करके लिखा है जो पुरानी उनकी साइन लैंग्वेज होती थी. They have written some things, some notice or say. And there were men, there were women and craft persons which make all the things used in the city. And like people were traveling to distant lands or returning with raw materials, like people जो इधर उधर जाते थे दूर दूर शहर में और वहां से रॉ मटेरियल्स लेके आते थे ताकि कुछ चीजें वो बना सके. And like terracotta toys, many terracotta toys were found in the Harappa site. And people, like the children which were there in the Harappan cities, they used to play with the terracotta toys. So I'll show you what is seal. So first, this is a street in Mohenjo-daro with a train. Like you can see how beautifully or how well these cities or these trains are designed. Like you can see it's a street in Mohenjo-daro. लाइक हम लोग अभी हमें ऐसे दिख रहा है बिकॉज हमें उसका रिमेन्स मिला है, और जब ये मतलब रियलिटी में बना होगा तो वो कितने अच्छे से उन्होंने बना रखा है. सो यू कैन सी it is a street with a train. And next is a well. So presently मतलब these अभी present में भी लोग ऐसी well से पानी निकालते हैं. presently भी ऐसी wells हैं, तो उस टाइम पे भी ऐसे well होते थे और लोग इनसे पानी निकाला करते थे. next is, so this is a seal. You can see a Harappan seal, and there is something written in the sign language. You can see in the upper part. This is the sign language which were used in the past. And next is, these are the terracotta toys. You can see how these toys are made and in the shapes of various animals. So small children used to play with these terracotta toys. So that's all for this video. I hope you have understood the first half of the chapter, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.